Hello, welcome to the Soccerlens show. I'm Andy Brassell. We're going to be looking back over some of the international action over the weekend, and we'll come to the World Cup playoffs in a bit, but the main thing I would like to concentrate on today is a friendly between two of the world's top 10 nations in Qatar, of course Brazil and England, and a lot of heavy criticism actually of the England performance in the English media. Of course, I think it's fair, anyone who saw the game would agree that Brazil were the better side. They looked not only technically superior, but physically superior. An interesting point, and echoing something that the excellent Tim Vickery often says about Brazil really breeding players for the European market, more physical, stronger players, the likes of Felipe Melo, Kaká, Lucas, sort of players like that. But it's interesting to see England slated in a lot of quarters and being talked about very despondently in terms of their chances for the World Cup. Of course, this was pretty much a second 11 for England, only a couple of players who would be considered regulars getting in the team, and one of those, Wayne Rooney, if we're honest, even when England have a full side, is possibly the only player who would really get a place in the Brazil side. But I think rather than looking at these deficiencies, for example, the technical gap between the two sides is not really something that can be remedied in the next 8 months. This is something that goes back to forms of coaching and a footballing culture. That's something that will change over maybe a generation if we're lucky, and if the much talked about National Football Centre in Burton-on-Trent finally gets the green light and goes ahead. This, of course, the idea of a national centre of excellence is something that I believe in very strongly, and something that in the last 20 years has done wonders for the French national team, for example. But we need to look at more practical ways in which England can improve in the short term, really. I think if we're looking at the team themselves, they need to focus on their strengths. Of course, England do have a chance in the World Cup. They are some way behind Spain or Brazil, but on the other hand, if everyone stays fit, and of course it's always an if, one thing that Fabio Capello has been excellent at so far is building a system that gets the best out of his best players, i.e. Wayne Rooney, Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard. So if those players could remain fit, that's reason for optimism, and hopefully by that time the likes of Rio Ferdinand, David James and John Terry will return to full fitness and be raring to go. I think the other measure that England can look at over the next couple of years is really something that they should have looked at a while ago: the problem of bridging the gap between consistently excellent under-21 side, and England have produced excellent under-21 teams since the days of when Peter Taylor was in charge back in the 90s. Bridging the gap between them and the senior side, and we need to ask ourselves, why are more players not breaking through from good under-21 sides to become mainstays in the national team? If we think back to that Taylor era, the likes of Alan Smith, and particularly someone like Lee Bowyer, who could have been excellent for England, never really made it. I think Bowyer ending up with just the one cap in the end. And we really don't want that to happen to the current generations of promising players. I'm thinking of the likes of Michael Mancienne and Tom Cleverley, who was excellent in another England under-21 win against Portugal at Wembley at the weekend. Now really, if those players are not getting enough first team football in the top division over in England, in the English Premier League, they need to look at where else they can play their football. Now I think with the relative riches of the English Premier League, the clubs should be forced by the FA to take a more proactive approach to this, and it's something that could benefit the clubs as well if they were to form partnerships with clubs from nations that have leagues a little bit below the English Premier League and La Liga, for example, French Ligue 1, the German Bundesliga, perhaps even the Portuguese Superliga. If those relationships could be formed, so players from clubs in the Premier League in England were farmed out to these nations to get an idea of a different footballing culture, to play top division football, and therefore not only improve their understanding of different footballing cultures, but get them experience at a highly competitive level, and perhaps even European experience in the Europa League and the Champions League. Perhaps that's something that would aid young English players in developing more quickly and provide that strength in depth that was really lacking in a situation like this weekend when England went to play Brazil. Now, of course, there was a lot of other international football going on, and I think it's good news for the second legs this week that all the 4 playoff ties in the World Cup qualification race in Europe are still alive. That late Slovenia goal in Russia giving them a chance in that home game in Ljubljana. That will be a hot atmosphere, and Russia, who have a few players who haven't been getting regular football this season, the likes of Yuri Zhirkov, of course, has suffered with some injuries, Roman Pavlyuchenko, who's having a tough time at Spurs at the moment. I think Slovenia have a real chance. Greece and Ukraine is as tight and low scoring as you would expect. I think Ukraine have got to be the favourites going into that, but of course Greece can't be ruled out, especially as they avoided conceding an away goal. Bosnia didn't manage to get an away goal in Portugal, but they had some chances. They had a good foothold in the game, and going into that game in a small little stadium in Zenica, just 18,000 people, the Portuguese will have to be at their best to make sure that they make it, and Cristiano Ronaldo makes it to the World Cup. Which of course leaves us with the final one between Ireland and France that we've talked about before. Now, of course, France have the best advantage of any of the teams in the playoffs, having won the away leg, but Hugo Lloris, the Lyon goalkeeper, had an excellent game again, and he's rapidly turning into one of the best goalkeepers in Europe, praised a lot in the French media for his role, particularly that great save at the feet of Glenn Whelan at the end of the first game in Croke Park on Saturday. I think he'll be busy again. Ireland go over there with nothing to lose. No one's really expecting much of them, and of course the atmosphere for the French national team at the Stade de France is often pretty hostile. A few people like Patrice Evra have complained about the criticism they've received and the lack of support they've received at the Stade de France from their very demanding fans. If Ireland can get the French fans on the back to their team early on, well, then maybe Giovanni Trapattoni's side will have a real chance of creating some sort of upset. Anyway, I hope you enjoy those games in the week. Please get in touch, give us your questions, and I'll try my best to answer those. You can follow me on www.alornothingtv.net or on Twitter, twitter.com/Andy Brassell. I'll be happy to answer any queries you've got there as well. So enjoy the playoff games this week, and we'll see you again next week.